Listen up, all fight fans and fitness junkies. You've been listening to me talk about Jocko Fuel for a while now, and if you've been waiting, the wait is over. This August, you can score a massive 30% off on all of Jocko Fuel's top-tier supplements. That's right, 30% off. Jocko Fuel is loaded with all of the good stuff and none of the bad. We're talking no added sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and absolutely no gray area or banned substances. Just pure, clean fuel to power your performances. And guys, I really want you to try some of my favorites like Jocko Go and Jocko Hydrate. This deal is only going to be available for the month of August. So use code Chael30 or go to JockoFuel.com. Don't wait. Fuel up with Jocko Fuel and crush your goals. Guys, click on the link below to make it happen. Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones. UFC, scared to do it, resisting doing it, holding up the ability for it to be done. And that is a narrative that's come out a few times. It's never caught wind. That's never been a viral piece, but it does come up a few times. And we can discuss it for Francis versus Jon, but the actual matchup isn't the point. The discussion would be. So, why would the UFC put on Jon versus Francis? Or why would the UFC allow Jon to go fight Francis? Why would the UFC support the idea of Jon versus Francis? Now please go. I'm open to any answer that you've got, but I didn't ask you if you'd like to see the fight or if you're interested in the fight, or I didn't do any of those things. I'm asking you why the UFC would pursue that fight. Now, it's very fun to act as though they're the ones that are holding it up for strategic reasons. But historically, you would be wrong because they tried to make the fight for an absorbent amount of money. And Jon Jones, who had never even fought in the weight class, entered the weight class knowing Francis was a top guy that he was going to have to face, and knowing full well his first fight would be a title fight. Now, in all fairness, you had Stipe, you had DC, you had Francis. Like, Jon didn't know who it would be, but do any of us think that that mattered? Like, it was made very clear he was going to go to heavyweight. He gave his light heavyweight belt back. I'm just reminding you of the timeline. It was made very clear by Dana at a press conference. Don't even start to have these conversations with me. When Jon comes back, it will be for a title. Any weight class he comes back at, Jon's fighting for a title. So we all understand that. So then Francis has the belt over Stipe. Like, I know it's fun to say that Jon was scared and Jon wouldn't do that fight. I get it. I mean, that's right. It's playground and it's poking. But just to remind you, in case you are being sincere, I'm trying to help you and educate you here. Jon went into the weight class pursuing Francis. That happened. And the UFC had the ability to make that fight and tried to make that fight. Not one time, several times over the course of just less than a year. That's just the truth. So Francis leaves and goes 1-1. 1-1 in boxing and no MMA. And the discussion comes of making Jon versus Francis. And I would just come back to you again and say, why would the UFC do that? If you think that they're the ones holding up great sport and great competition, why would they do that? I'm really just asking you the golden rule of life. If you were in their shoes, it was your decision, what's the decision that you would make? I think you'd have a very hard time answering that question. And if you were saying, so we can all find out who the greatest fighter in the world is, like, that's a fun thing to say. And I don't even know that you'd be wrong, right? Like, you would have had Francis, who was the reigning heavyweight champion, and we had Jon, who was the light heavyweight champion. He gave it back, but he never lost the title. Like, you got a really interesting story there. You got two hammers going against each other. I think that would have been the biggest draw in our industry. But when you come now and you say you want to see Jon and Francis to know who the best is, do you really believe that? And I'll take you at your word. It's just I know that you've been saying it's Aspinall. And before that, you said it was Pavlich. And partway in there, you said it was Pereira. Are you confident that Francis is going to win his next fight? It's one of these interesting things. And the reason I go down that road is I would never expect a reasonable answer from a reasonable person to have anything to do with competition. I know that that's the first answer that you would give, so we can find out who the best is. Okay, great. But you're the UFC. Why would you let that happen? Why? What is it that you have to gain? And then moreover, what are the reasons that you wouldn't let it happen? And that one is the one you feel that you can answer because they're scared because their guy, Jon Jones, is going to get beat. And you kind of got to turn your head and say, okay, is that your final answer? I'm just asking you for one, but is that the one you're going with? The UFC won't let it happen because they're afraid Jon's going to get beat. Is that your final answer? Okay, great. That's really wonderful. If you were in their shoes and you thought your guy wasn't going to get beat, you wouldn't release him either. Like you haven't helped the situation by saying that. You've actually just answered the entire thing within your own statement. And it just turns into one of these odd situations. Why would somebody suggest that somebody promote somebody that isn't them, that's openly said, I don't want to be with them? Why would you possibly think that that was going to happen? Why would you even suggest that it happen? Particularly when just over a year ago, it was legally and contractually able to happen. And I go down that road and I bang that drum because it is very interesting to me, even though it's not viral, but it is the one topic, the UFC and their unwillingness to co-promote. It's the one topic that no matter how poorly the engagements are online, it does keep resurfacing. Like I've never seen, why does the NFL not play the CFL or the XFL? How does the NCAA champion team not take on the dream team? Like basketball's a really strange one for me. They don't even contest it. They just send Olympians. There should be 5 other people that can raise their hand and say, we want to play you. And that would hold up. That would hold up in any court. They would back down instantly because they know that they would lose the fight. You don't have 5 guys that respect the Olympics enough to want to do it or know the process of filing litigation. I mean, I'm just sharing with you. I do think that that's very interesting. There's a whole nother conversation, just so you know. I never talk about this, and I'm not going to go very far with it. But Jon and Francis could fight today. There is nothing to stop them, just so you know. I know you believe differently, and I know that you've been told differently, but the only reason that exclusivity works is because people have been told differently, and they believe it. There is nothing that could stop them, just so you understand. And why would they do this? Is that what you would do? Is that your level of business prowess? Would you go in and would you build something? Because if you believe that they're scared, you believe that's going to hurt Jon Jones, who's fought one time in 4 years. Like, he's not an overly counted on guy for business, even though you like to tell the story that way. And if you do tell the story that way, then do you believe if Jon wins, he gets a bounce? The idea of promoting somebody that isn't yours, it's a very baffling concept. Like the idea that Apple would be blamed for not promoting Microsoft's chief legal to COO. Like, you sit around and go, I don't even know how to respond to that because I'm not stupid. But some of you do believe that fight should be made. So I'd like to hear from you because sometimes it's interesting to hear from people that are stupid.